So I saw she was in a good position. There you go, you see the webbing between the toes there. It's quite impressive, isn't it? But basically, there's a male there, and that's a female. This right here is my pair of Chinese flying frogs, also known as Rhacophorus dennisii for a scientific name. Now, if you're like, what was that? That's not English. I was like, well, no, it's not. It's here you go. Come on, go for a climb. Eee. Elegant. So it's a way of classifying animals. So a genus, which in this case is Rhacophorus, is when you have animals which are very similar to each other, but they are different species. So, like for example, lions and tigers. We can all agree lion and tigers have more in common than, say, for example, your standard house cat and a Scottish wildcat. So they've been put in their own group of cats. So lions and tigers are in the group Panthera, or genus Panthera. And then the second part of the name is the species, like individual species names. So, for example, for a lion, it's Panthera leo, and a tiger, it's Panthera tigris. And so, in this case, these are Rhacophorus dennisii, with dennisii being the species name. I hope that sort of explains things alright, I hope at least. So these are really cool species. The whole genus is really cool, to be honest. So the genus comes from a lot of the old tropical world, so like the old world being like Asia and Africa, etc., those sort of things. And you often find them in like Africa, Madagascar. Off she goes. Madagascar, and India, etc., and Southeast Asia. That's where you find the whole genus Rhacophorus. This particular species, being a Chinese flying frog, is found in southern China as well as Vietnam and Laos and those other countries. Normally, for this type of frog, you find them in subtropical rainforests, so like rainforests which has a colder, dry winter period, which normal tropical rainforests do not have. You also find them in wetlands and other sort of habitats. These are quite adaptable compared to the other Rhacophorus species. So, a really cool thing with this genus is they make foam nests. Now, many Rhacophorus, especially a lot of the Southeast Asian ones, a lot of them especially, they make foam nests where it's up in a tree. And this is why they're called whipping frogs. That's another name for them, is whipping frogs, because they whip things up. And basically, when in a state called amplexus, which if you've seen two frogs humping each other, that's what it's called, it's amplexus. It's when the male bear hugs the female, and he's got pads on his thumb called nuptial pads, and he grips onto the female like that, and then they basically, he sort of hangs down on her back, and that's called amplexus. And when they're in that sort of state, she will secrete a fluid, and using their legs, they'll rub their legs together, making this fluid into a froth, which is kind of mixed with a bit of sperm as well, and this is where she lays her eggs. And so for this species, it's done above water. It's done like up in a branch or on a leaf above water. So if he sees videos of those that are little like red-eyed tree frogs from like Costa Rica, where they lay the eggs directly on a leaf above water, and a big old wasp comes along, rips the tadpoles out of the eggs, and they all drop into the water. It's like that, but better, because the foam helps to protect them from insects, as well as keeping the humidity nice and stable, and possibly also blocking out some UV potentially. But not all species do this up in the trees. Some species of the genus will do this on the ground. They'll dig out little indentations, like in the soil, like dig out a little indentation on the soil, and the male will call from there, and then that little indentation becomes where they make the foam nest. And eventually that little indentation becomes a pool until the rains go and wash the tadpoles into the main river. So there's a lot of different ways of using a foam nest, but for this species this is a more arboreal, they use a more arboreal method. Elegant. So they are very good jumpers. I mean, he didn't really show it there, but that was because he didn't want to jump too far. But they are very good jumpers. Literally, I open up a door, I put a branch at the other end of the room, and I put a bug on it, and they just jump across the room. It's quite impressive. And part of this is obviously their very strong leg muscles, which most frogs have. But if you saw at the beginning of the video the loads of webbing between her toes, well, this webbing allows them to perform behaviour called parachuting, and that's when animals will jump from trees and glide. And so these webbing between the toe, when they stretch their toes out like that, they'll jump in the air and stretch their toes out like that, and increases their surface area, making little parachutes, and it allows them to glide through the canopy. Now, this species isn't as canopy dependent as other species. Like, these ones are more adaptable. You can find them in reed beds, etc. And their gliding isn't as efficient as other species in the genus. So these guys, from what I've read, can get about 8 to 10 meters in distance, which is still impressive considering, like, it is a frog, But you have other species like Rhacophorus nigropalmatus, which is the Wallace's flying frog, and that can go about 15 or so meters, and that's a true canopy specialising species from southern Eastern Asia. They have massive amounts of webbing. It's crazy. And this webbing is quite attractive as well. It's jet black with bright yellow streaks around the edges and bright yellow toes, so it looks quite nice. Which partly that, and the fact there's a lot of old footage laying around of them, is why they're often used for filming. So if you see a flying frog on TV, chances are it's a Wallace's flying frog.